Hey, what's going on guys? My name is James and welcome to the first official tutorial in our Minecraft coding series season 2. I'm calling this the first tutorial because the video before this was more or less just a video to test the waters and the community's response to it. It turned out that we got a pretty decent response, so we're going to go ahead and continue with this series. I may or may not end up deleting the first tutorial since it's actually ahead of our main sequence of tutorials, and it may interfere with things we may teach in the future, so I may be repeating some things in this video that I have in the past video. Nevertheless, I just wanted to say that Global or Ryan will be helping me along the way and will be taking up the second half of the series to teach you guys most of the hacks. I'll be covering most of the aesthetics and base code of our tutorial client, while he'll be covering most of the mods. Alright, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into the actual tutorial. Today I'm going to be going over pretty much the backbone of our client, that is our base class, our objects class, and calling our clients in the base classes of Minecraft. Now, I am aware that some of these classes aren't necessarily essential to the life of our client, but they're good things to start with in my opinion, and are the first classes that I start with when I code my clients. I also want to apologize for my keyboard. It may be pretty loud when I'm typing. That is because it's a mechanical keyboard, so you may be hearing that pretty loud. But anyway, let's go ahead into client src and net.minecraft.src. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a new package, and I'm going to call it com.client. We actually didn't have to go into net.minecraft, but anyway, let's go ahead and make a new class, and this is going to be called client. Now this is going to be our base class, and it's pretty much going to hold all of our essential information. Actually, it's not necessarily essential, but it's just a few good things to have in a base class. First thing is going to be the name of our client, the version number, and the release date or release version of Minecraft. So let's go ahead and actually make this class final because we don't want any other classes extending it or modifying it. So let's also go ahead and make some strings. I'm going to make them private and final because, again, I don't want anything modifying this information or directly retrieving it. So I'm going to make a private final string, and I'm going to, in all capitals, name it name, and I'm going to go ahead and assign it the name client. All of this you can actually change. You don't necessarily have to call it name or client. You can change it to whatever you want. I'm also going to make another private final string, and we are going to name this release, and this is going to be 1.0 because this is the first build of our client. Let's also make another one, name this MC version, and we are in 1.7.2. I'm actually going to put 1.7.x because it will work for any 1.7 clients or this code. Actually, it'll work for any version of Minecraft, but whatever. Let's go ahead and make some getters for these strings so that we can get the information. So let me go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to make this public because we want other classes to be able to access these getters so that they can access the information in these strings. I'll explain more in a sec. So we're going to name this a public string get name. It will take no parameters, and we're just going to return name, just like that. And we're going to do the same for these others. So public string get release, no parameters, return release. And again, public string get MC version. Again, I apologize for my keyboard. It's pretty loud. Okay, so basically what's going to happen is, since this is a private final string, nothing will be able to directly access the information. So if I were to call this information, if I were to call name directly from another class, it won't be able to access it. That's why we have a getter for that string, so that instead of directly calling this variable, it will instead call this method, and this method will retrieve the information So that's basically our base class. It's going to hold all of our information here that we just made, as well as a few getters to retrieve the information. So let's go ahead and now make another package, and I'm just going to call this main, and this is going to hold again some essential information or essential classes. So let's go ahead and make a new class, and let's call this objects. So this is basically going to hold all of our objects. Let me go ahead and make a public static. Yeah, I know, the infamous public static. And I'm going to make public static Minecraft MC equals Minecraft dot get Minecraft. And now I'm just going to have it import it for me. And there we go. That's one object. Now, basically what this is it is a static reference to the class Minecraft. So anytime I need to access something in the class Minecraft, I will just have to do something like this: objects.mc and then whatever is in that class, instead of directly going into Minecraft dot whatever. In our clients, we can't actually do that because we need a static reference for certain classes. Now let's go ahead and make a few more essential objects that will later be needed in our client. So let's go ahead and make another public static, and we'll have a font renderer, and I'm just going to go ahead and name this FR. And now notice I'm using MC dot. Now this MC, we're referring to this right here that we just made. So this is basically how we're going to use it. So MC dot font renderer, and I'm going to go ahead and let Eclipse import it for me. And there we go, we've made two objects in our objects class. Now anytime, again, I'm explaining this, anytime we need to access any of this crap, we'll basically just do objects dot and then whatever our reference is, and that will basically be the same as this class, and we'll be able to access anything in these classes. Now I'm also going to make another object, and I'm going to make a public static client, and I'm going to make a reference to this class right here. That way we can use these getters that we just made. So let's go ahead and name this client, and we're going to just name it new client. There we go, and we're going to have Eclipse imported, and there we go, we've made another object. Okay, so now that we have a few objects in our objects class pretty much complete, not necessarily complete, but complete for now, I just wanted to say that this isn't actually the best way, neither is it the only way to do this kind of thing, to get references to other classes. Some people like to use getters, and they'd have a wrapper class instead of an objects class, and some people have both. Personally, I like to use objects class just because I think it's easier than using getters, and it's faster to make. But honestly, it's up to you if you want to make a objects class or a wrapper class. I'm not going to go over wrapper classes, mostly because I don't use them, so I wouldn't be the one to teach something like that. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're going to go ahead and make a new class in our main package, and I'm going to name this startup. Now what we're going to use this startup class for is basically process everything that we need at the beginning of the startup of our client. So once our client starts up, anything that we put in this class is going to load before the client actually boots up Minecraft itself. So let's go ahead and just make a constructor. So let's name this public startup. And now for just shits and giggles, we're just going to go ahead and do system.out.println. Now this isn't actually necessary, and you won't even see this unless you're using like a console to run Minecraft or something, but we're just going to say client has started. Now I'll show you that this actually works, or how this works, and I'll show you the console, and it'll show client has started in the console. So we're not actually going to be putting anything that's really useful in this class quite yet, but we will be needing this later on in our client. Right now this is kind of useless and really doesn't matter whether or not you have it in there. But let's go ahead and call this class so that Minecraft actually runs it at the beginning of its startup. So let's go ahead and net.minecraft, and let's go ahead and find client and minecraft.java. So let's go ahead and search up startup. Oh, I actually had startup in there, but you should find this around line 593 in 1.7.2. Now I'm going to go ahead and call our startup class in this minecraft.java. So I'm going to name it startup, or I'm going to call startup, and I'm going to name it client start equals new startup. Oops. Now this is basically the same thing as what we did in our objects class, as you can see here, except without these public static crap. Now basically what Minecraft is going to do is it's going to run through all this code, and once it gets here, it's going to make a reference to our startup class, and it's going to run the constructor. And whatever we put in this constructor is what's going to run once Minecraft starts. So we need this startup class to run some essential processes that will need to occur at the very beginning of the startup. So we're not actually, like I said, we're not actually going to be putting anything in this startup class as of now, but it will become very, very useful and essential later down the road when we start coding other things. Okay, let me just run the client for you guys real quick just to show you that our startup class is successfully being called and is working fine. So as you can see in the console, it says client has started, and if I go back to our startup class, that's what we told it to do. So every time we start up the client, it will always do whatever we put in the constructor. And as you can see, it says client has started, just like what we programmed it to do. Okay, so that's basically the end of this very short tutorial. It's basically just some essential things that we needed to get through so that we'll have an easier time down the road later on. The next tutorial, I'm not sure if I'm going to do keybinds or if I'm going to do some modules or something like that, but expect the next tutorial soon, as this one really isn't that useful as of now. So we're going to start using these classes later on when I teach you the GUI, how to call the GUI, how to make modules, things like that. So get ready for that, because that's coming soon. So yeah guys, please leave a like and a comment. Those really help me out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Expect the next video soon, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.
I got a new one for you. I like the way that sounds. I'm about to do it for you. I like to break it down.